Hey guys, what's up? It's Dave. I'm continuing on with the Honda Fourtrax 300. I've got some front end parts that I'm still waiting for, so I can't continue on assembling the rebuilt front end yet. So while I'm waiting, there's other things that I can do, and one of which is to rework these racks. They were in somewhat of rough shape. They were bent. The mounting bars weren't lining up very well with the mounting bolts. So they needed to be straightened out, and they're pretty ugly. And they are, pretty prevalent when you look at the bike when it's done. They're right out there. They're kind of a cosmetic part of the whole look of the bike. So I'm trying to figure out what I can do to get these things to look nice without spending a ton of money or, a ton of hours on it. And while I was, warming up parts of the bar to get them hot so that I could bend them back in line and get them straight, I noticed something that gave me an idea on how I can get these things working and looking really nice. So let me share that with you. Okay, so this is what I have to work with. These are the racks, front and back, and, they're in rough shape. I mean, they're 25 years old, so I expect them, people are loading stuff on here and beating them up pretty well, but they look not too nice, and they weren't really lining up very well. So, here's an example of one of the bars that wasn't lining up too well. This drop-down bar here wasn't lining up. It was bent, so I had to kind of heat it up with a torch, get it kind of cherry red, and then I was able to just kind of pull that bar, get it all lined up beautifully. So all the mounting bars and all the mounting holes lining up perfect, so putting them back on the bike when I'm done is going to be easy. And then I noticed, where I had to heat it up, after I was done heating it up, I took a wire brush and just gently, effortlessly dragged the wire brush across it, and the bars came out looking like this. And I'm like, well, that's what I want to start painting something like that. I guess there's several options you have here. I could take this out somewhere and have them sandblast it and powder coat it. That would probably be the best thing to do. I could, put a wire brush on a drill. That seems to me like a ton of work, and it would not come out very well. I can't fit them in my glass cabinet, so I can't sandblast them. But when I heat them up and burn the paint off, they come out perfect like that. So, I'm thinking I'm going to just run a torch over these things and melt the paint off. Get it all stripped down, and then I can, prep them for some etching primer and then some paint. And, I did the back rack already, and this is how it came out. And this back rack was just as gnarly as the front. It looked terrible, and it came out awesome. It took some time, but there wasn't a whole lot of work involved. So let me show you exactly how I go about doing this, and we'll kind of do the front rack together, but it should come out as nice as this back rack, which I think is beautiful. Okay, I'm going to go step by step through, on this bar. I'm going to show you on this bar. I'm not going to make you watch me do the whole thing. That would be kind of silly, but I'll do step by step on this bar, and we'll show you exactly what it is I'm doing to get a beautiful, clean, stripped down, bare metal rack that I can start painting on. Alright, so that's all I'm going to do with the heat. And then I can either let this cool down, but I'm just going to take a wire brush and just effortlessly All right, I'm a little impatient, so I just took a wet rag and wiped it down to get it to cool down. And now I'm just going to take, what do I got here? I got 180 grit paper, and I'm just going to scuff it up. And that's it. So I'm going to do the whole bar. Let me zoom in here for you. I'm going to do the whole bar and get it like that. I mean, that's perfectly clean, rough. I'll spray some etching primer on that. Should get a nice bite. So let me do the rest of the rack like this. I don't want to bore you with that whole thing. Again, it's not a whole lot of hard work. It just takes a little bit of time, and it's not even that much time. But I'm going to go through this whole top rack, and then we'll come back and I'll show you my next step after that. Okay, so here I am. It took about maybe 45 minutes or so with the torch, just to slowly walk the torch around, burn all the paint off, wipe it down with a wet rag to cool things off. And now I'm going to just scratch everything down with some rough sandpaper to give it a nice kind of rough textured surface for the etching primer to really get a good bite on it. Alright, that looks pretty good. Pretty well stripped down to bare metal and scuffed up with a rough surface. Alright, here's a close look at this rack now after about, I don't know, an hour, maybe an hour and a half, perhaps. But it's all nice and clean. You saw what it looked like initially, and it was rough. And this crossbar was all kinds of beat up. And so now I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom half of this rack or bumper. You don't need to watch that either. I'll do that and then we'll come back. Alright, now that I got it stripped down to the bare metal and scuffed up nicely, before I put some primer on it, I want to wipe it down with wax and silicone remover. So let me do that next. And just wipe the whole thing down. Now let that thoroughly evaporate and dry before we start hitting it with some etching primer. Alright, now I'm going to give it a couple coats of self-etching primer onto the bare metal. And here's how it looks with a coat of etching primer. That's the bottom of it. Here's the top side. Good coverage. Took about a can, actually took a whole can to do this top rack because you're wasting a lot of paint. The can's giving me a big wide spray pattern and I'm just trying to paint a narrow little bar, but looks pretty good, and now it's ready for some color, but I'm going to let this really evaporate and dry quite a bit before I do that. Okay, and now the final step is to put some color on. I got some semi-gloss black, and we're going to shoot this thing now that the primer has fully dried overnight. Okay, here's the final product. I think it came out amazing. It looks fantastic. We all know what it looked like when I first started. These bars were all beat up. I didn't want to just paint over top of those gnarly old bars. And I also didn't want to send it out anywhere to have it sandblasted. And at least for me, the torching off the old paint gave me a perfectly clean metal. I mean, it looks like, this is what it would look like if I had it sandblasted. But, you know, I don't like sending things out. I don't like other people doing things that I could do myself. So there's the front bumper and the top rack. Looks fantastic. the rear rack as well. Looks great. So I'm very pleased with that. Hope you enjoyed that video. If so, consider subscribing to the channel. Next up, I'm going to turn this bike around and I'm going to be working on the rear end, the final drive, and the rear brake, and the axle bearings, and the swing arm bearings, and the other end of the bike to get this thing in perfect condition. So stay tuned for that. And thanks for watching.